Hey Enneagram friend, this is Abby Rodriguez, your certified and IEA accredited Enneagram teacher and coach. In this space, I'll give you a sneak peek into real live coaching sessions and teach you how to apply the wisdom of the Enneagram into your life for personal growth. The invitation each episode is to take on a posture of curiosity about yourself and others, so that you can shift from merely surviving to fully thriving in your everyday life. Visit my website at abbyrodriguez.com and listen into this episode to learn more. For the next 9 podcast episodes, we're going to talk about our stress integration, some of the natural habits that happen in our type structure when we experience stress, and how we can manage that better, how we can notice it and observe what's going on, but also how we can better cope with stress so that we don't get kind of pushed over into our stress number. So the Enneagram is a dynamic system. It's not a static one. And although we each have one core Enneagram type, our number looks different in different situations and in different settings. And so we're going to take a look at what our number looks like when we're stressed, when we're experiencing stress in our season. If you look at the Enneagram diagram, those internal lines connect our type to 2 other numbers. One of those lines connects you to your growth point, or your direction of integration is sometimes how it's referred. And then the other line is connected to your stress number, or your that line of disintegration. And so for this series, we're going to focus specifically on your stress number and how that shows up when we experience settings, situations, people that cause our stress response to get activated. So for every number, there is a healthy range of behaviors in our type. But then there's also kind of an average range and then an unhealthy range in your type. Most of us are really just in that average range. And when you experience moments where you're reactive, something gets triggered in your type structure and you respond, you kind of dip down into more unhealthy levels of your type, and then you come back up to that resting state in that average range. So these moments when you are having behavior that's unhelpful, or maybe you realize you have acted poorly, oftentimes those moments happen without us fully even realizing what was going on or why we got so caught up in it. And so our hope is that we can observe some of these responses, not to beat ourselves up for unhelpful behavior or some of these unhealthy habits that we're noticing, but instead so that we can balance them out a little bit. So if you can identify what your number looks like when it experiences stress, it's another layer of increasing our self-awareness. If you know what your default setting is in stress, you can recognize that and start to ask questions around what is causing us to be stressed. We also, as we become more aware of our stress response, it invites us to pause and to notice what's going on rather than just reacting habitually from the tendencies of our type. We can choose to pause and give ourselves some space to consider how we want to move forward. And if we're not aware of our stress response and this pattern that we're going to talk through, the stress that we experience will just naturally push us over into our stress number. And it's going to push us over to the lower side of our stress number. In these moments of realizing that we're stressed, it can really be an invitation to instead use our stress number as a resource and move to the high side of that number instead. And we're going to talk through what this looks like for each of the 9 types. So for each of the 9 types, again, I'm going to walk through, and the invitation is to be curious and to even make note for yourself what resonates. Find spaces with your spouse or your friends or family members to be able to talk through and to share what you notice. One of the limitations of having a teaching audio rather than being in a shared space for a workshop is that you don't get a chance to share what's resonating and what's landing in your experience. And so I hope that you will take note of it, and then you will share it with those in your life, those that you love, and the people that we're learning to love even more. So again, as I go through, another reminder to be compassionate to yourself. It's not about beating yourself up for some of the unhelpful behaviors that you notice, but rather the intention of bringing some awareness around this pattern, and also so that you can give yourself some support. Some of these unhelpful behaviors that we're talking about, they're related to stress. And so rather than beating ourselves up that we're stressed, The invitation is, could we be instead kind to ourselves and noticing, yeah, this isn't a great behavior. I'm just stressed though. And so can we instead provide some support and care for ourselves rather than beating ourselves up about whatever reaction we had? And so taking a moment to pause, to breathe, to check in with your felt sense in that moment. Can you feel your nervous system dysregulated? Can you feel knots in your stomach, or maybe there's a heat in your felt sense or a tightness in your chest? What's happening in your felt sense? And pausing and noticing what's happening so that you can choose how you want to move forward rather than getting caught up in the reactivity of it. And really an invitation to name what you need. As you observe some of these pieces that are happening for you, what is it that you need if you're stressed? Is there a stressor that you can mitigate or remove? Is there some type of support you can add in to balance the triggering aspect of that stressor? Or maybe is there, a need that's not being met, a boundary that you need to put in place, or maybe just an area that you need support. So giving yourself some compassion, because the reality is you're just stressed. That's why these things are happening as we go through and talk about them. Okay, so we're going to start with type 1 and go around the circle all the way to 9 and talk about what stress looks like in our own type structure, what it looks like when we naturally get pushed over into our stress point, and what we could do instead, what the healthier side of that stress response could look like using our stress number as a resource for us. Hey friends, if this episode was helpful for you and you want to learn more, the content from this episode is from the Growth and Self-Care Workshop audio that's available for purchase on my website for only $20. The teaching audio is over 4 hours of Enneagram content where I walk you through type-specific stressors and the natural stress response for each type and how we can better manage stress and how we can incorporate practices for self-care based on our type into our everyday life. The teaching audio is a digital download, so you can listen to it on your phone or your computer, and it also comes with a digital workbook. So I really want to encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity or to give it to a friend in this season if you have someone that's coming to mind that has a lot of stress and needs some support to navigate that.